You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Become a subscriber and support Radical Radio. Call 03 9419 8377 or subscribe online at 3cr.org.au/subscribe.
Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction, in the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning, death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed mind.
Welcome to the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia on the National Community Radio Satellite. Listen to the Anarchist World This Week, Australia's sacred cow slaughterhouse. Listen to analysis of local, national, international events. Listen to analysis you'll never hear anywhere else.
Welcome to the Anarchist World This Week. Yes, I am laughing for a variety of reasons, and some you'll never know about. This is the Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia, courtesy of the Community Radio Network. This program is streaming live on 3cr.org.au. My name's Joseph Toscano. I'm hosting this week's Anarchist World This Week. And if nature calls, the bikie next door needs some sugar for his meth lab, don't despair. The program is podcast. You can access the podcast by going to 3cr.org.au. And if you're wondering what anarchy is all about and you think it's arrived in the US of A, the land of the brave and the free, sorry, it's a little bit more boring. Anarchism is a simple concept. You can call it an ideology, an idea. It's about power and wealth. It's about sharing power and using wealth for the common good. Exceptionally conservative concepts. Obviously, to wrest power from those who exercise it and to share wealth from those who have it is a different matter. That is a complex struggle that has been going on for centuries, decades, centuries, thousands of years. It's been the goal, I think, of humanity from the beginning of time. All right, let's move on. Forget about the homegrown philosophy. All right. Yep, you're all wondering. Last week, as I was broadcasting the election results in the US of A, the land of the brave and the free, were coming through, and then we had all the great experts telling us this and telling us that. Then we had people falling in the streets, clutching at their heartstrings, saying, "This is a triumph. This is a triumph of evil over good. This is the end of the known universe." Excuse me. This is a blip in human history. It's nothing. And ultimately, all political, social and community struggle is about power and wealth. It's about concentrating power, it's about concentrating wealth, or it's about devolving power or sharing wealth. And what we've seen in the US of A is nothing new. We've seen it around the globe time and time again since the Second World War. And it was nice to see that the great Confabulator successfully wooed the American people. Obviously, the American people, a significant number, a slight majority, believed the people behind the great Confabulator. This was the beginning of a new dawn. Well, actually, this is the end of the New Deal. Because what made America great, in inverted commas, wasn't its foreign military failures. What made America great was the New Deal in the 30s and 40s, which incorporated so many people in the Great American Dream, and that include the intervention of the state in the lives of people to provide basic necessities. That's what the New Deal was about. It's about enfranchising the disenfranchised. So after 50 years of deregulation, privatisation, globalisation, corporatisation, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, we saw that the American people were casting around for a new deal. Casting around for a new deal. Looking for some type of miracle. And they felt that the great confabulator was their person. But more importantly, all those organisations, movements and people behind the great confabulator. He's just the buffoon at the front. And when I say we're talking about the old deal, I'm talking about what I've spoken about for decades. What we've seen since the Second World War is the rolling back of the gains which were made by people as they try to improve their situation in the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. That's what we saw. We saw all those great gains which we now take for granted, which we have allowed to be taken from us on the illusory promise that somehow things will get better. So the American people have now put their faith in a billionaire rapist, a billionaire felon, and the people behind the buffoon, that somehow they will improve their lives. So let's look at the four horsemen. What are they promising? Did they promise an increase in the minimum wage? No. Did they promise a breakdown of corporations? No. They have promised an end to globalisation. And we can't talk about privatisation because there's nothing left to privatise in the land of the brave and the free. So this is nothing new. It's about people looking for something different. The neoliberal revolution, which was spearheaded by the Reagans and the Thatchers of the world, is a total failure as far as the majority of people is concerned. And now the great confabulator has convinced the majority of the American people that the way forward is to put their trust on the very people who want to turn back the clock to a supposedly golden era that never existed. We are now seeing a dying empire drowning in its own effluent. I'll repeat it again. The land of the brave and the free is a dying empire drowning in its own effluent. And it will continue to be a drowning empire, or a dying empire, drowning in its own effluent, as long as they think that somehow a group of billionaires is going to improve their day-to-day lives. So how are they going to do it? Will they improve job security? No. Will they improve the minimum wage? No. Will they pass legislation which will assist the expansion of the minuscule trade union movement in the US of A? No. What they'll do is they'll turn back the clock. And they'll turn back the clock by creating straw men and women which they'll knock down has the American people cheer. Remember, this is the country where 1 million people died in the 1860s fighting a civil war to retain slavery where most of the Western world had rejected slavery. Let's not forget that. So if any American thinks that somehow having a billionaire felon, somehow will improve their lives, they've got to be, they need to reset the agenda. Now, obviously, this victory will give the more authoritarian elements within the US of A, and there are many, will embolden them to increase their attack on minorities, to marginalise people, to intimidate them, and that's the key, intimidation. So, reality is reality. We do have a climate emergency, whether people believe in it or not. It's not a belief system. And if the US of A, under the great Confabulator and his many billionaire supporters, thinks that ignoring it, that somehow things will improve, well, they won't for the American people. And if somehow the American people think that by, deporting a few million people, marginalising, ostracising minorities that can't defend themselves, that somehow their lives will improve, it's not. Will the thousands of acres of, of homeless people, will their lives improve? The lives improve of all those people in the Rust Belt whose jobs were globalised, whose jobs were sent away to sections of cheap labour. These are the very people who are now in charge of the chook run. The foxes are in charge of the chicken pen. So what do you think they'll do? Well, I'll tell you what they'll do. They'll try to remove any regulations which are left which protect people. They'll ensure that people will continue in insecure part-time employment because that increases profitability. We will continue to see the increasing corporatisation of the US of A as we see in Australia. And if you think that the election of the great Confabulator and his supporters will somehow decrease the amount of aggression and war on the planet, think again. I mean, it's simple. The great Confabulator supporters believe that the main threat is the land of the brave and the free, is the Chinese Communist Party. Not the Russian dictatorship. They can deal with a dictator. It's not an issue. And obviously the Ukraine will be given up. And Western Europe, to a significant degree, will be asked to, pay its own way. But the dilemma is this, and this is my major concern, and I've spoken about this before. If you chain yourself as a country to a dying empire drowning in its own effluent, you will also drown in that effluent. And if there was ever a time in human history, ever a time in Australian history that we should saw off the handcuffs which we share with this dying empire, it is now. Because the successive American governments have demonstrated time and time and time again, they're not interested in the rest of the world. They're interested in their survival. That's what they're interested in. And what we've seen over the last 2 decades in this country is an attempt to integrate Australia and the Australian Defence Forces into the US military digital industrial complex. We're seeing more and more troops being stationed on American soil. We're seeing the US bases on this country expand. We've seen growing treaty arrangements with the US of A. We've seen our military infrastructure integrated into the US structure. And it's one thing we should remember in 2024 is we're no longer this little continent on the edge of the planet which nobody can get to. All people have to do is press a few buttons and we could find ourselves in the same situation the people of Gaza and southern Lebanon find themselves as I speak. For us to continue as a nation and as a people to pledge our undying loyalty to the US of A, which is ruled by the great Confabulator and his many supporters, is tragic. It's comic. It's pathetic. It means that we become, that's right, we become the battleground for their war. Simple. I have never been more adamant, in my opinion, that chaining ourselves to the US of A, believing that somehow they will ultimately protect us, is the most ludicrous defence position this country has ever taken. If there's one lesson we need to learn, as the dying empire drowns in its own effluent, as it destroys its own people, is that we should not be part of that game. Look, I can pontificate, but you can act. It's important. It's important that we, as a people, as individuals, as families, as groups, as communities, make it abundantly clear that we do not want to be involved in any more American wars. End of story. We should be part of the non-aligned movement, not part of a so-called Western alliance, or more like a US alliance. Remember the coalition of the willing that invaded Iraq? We were part of that. Wherever the US goes, we go. We haven't lost a lot of people, but the way things are going, we may find ourselves in a difficult situation when we're asked to pay the piper. So the American people have made their decision. They've made their bed. They'll need to lie in it. But it is a period of unparalleled opportunity. Why do you think Gina Rinehart, Australia's richest woman, and Pratt, one of Australia's richest men, were there celebrating the victory of the great Confabulator? Look at their role in this country. Look at the amount of wealth that has been amassed by these people. Look at what's happening in the stock market as they rub their hands in glee, thinking Nirvana time has come and profitabilities will soar. But the fact is, as I said earlier on, reality is reality. It doesn't matter what we believe. It doesn't matter whether we believe there's an old man in the sky with a flowing beard deciding who's good and who's bad and who'll join him. And it doesn't matter whether we think a green-eyed cat rules the world or that there are lizards rule the world. It doesn't really matter what you think. What matters is reality. And nature, irrespective of us believing we control nature, ultimately controls us. So ultimately, it's reality which will bite. because expectations have risen in the US of A. They have risen. If we get rid of the others, the marginalised, the dispossessed, somehow our lives will improve. That's what the German people believed before World War II. That's what the American people believe today. But to give that job to a billionaire and a set of billionaires is ludicrous. As I said before, this is the ripping up of what's left of the New Deal. This is nothing more than 19th century capitalism, the triumph of 19th century capitalism, where those who own the means of production, distribution, exchange and communication continue to accumulate wealth while everybody else plays and helps them to acquire their wealth at their expense. And that's the story of the American election. It's not about good and evil. People think it's about good and evil. It's not a struggle about good guys and bad guys. It's not a struggle, about gender. It's not a struggle about this or that. These are things which people use to promote this idea that somehow a government of billionaires who've acquired their wealth by exploiting other people's labour is somehow going to turn around and improve the lives of everybody around them. Ultimately, the American people will need to deal with the situation they've created. They can drown in their own effluent, or they can swim against the tide. And there will be many in America, in the land of the brave and the free, who will swim against the tide, irrespective of the personal price they will pay. And there will be a personal price to be paid. There'll be a personal price to be paid in terms of intimidation by a judiciary, which has been totally politicised. There will be a personal price to be paid by the ascendancies of marginalised fascists who now have entered the mainstream, who will use their physical prowess to intimidate those who challenge them. So it is a trying time, but it is a period of unparalleled opportunity, because people like us have the opportunity and the ability to fight back. And that's the key. We have that opportunity. They've tried deregulation, they've tried privatisation, they've tried globalisation, they've tried, privatisation, they've tried all those things. Things have got worse. And now they've put their faith in billionaires, and things will get even worse. And then there is that potential for change. And in many regards, what we are seeing in the United States of America, the land of the brave and the free, is the same book which will be read as we move to a federal election in this country. Already the Prime Minister in waiting, the Right Honourable Mr. Dutton, is rubbing his hands in glee, trying to, somehow fashion himself as an alternative Prime Minister who hand in glove supports the great Confabulator and that alliance that will put us into so much peril. And people talk about this country seeing carnage. The only people in this country who've seen mass carnage are this country's First Nations people. They know what it's like. But the rest of us, apart from those soldiers that were conscripted in World War II, those that volunteered in World War I, have no idea what it's like to live in Gaza or the southern Lebanon or a war zone where every moment of every day is a potential death sentence. And if we want to live like that, we just continue the way we're going. But if we don't want to live like that, if we don't want our children or grandchildren to face those dangers, it's time that we cut those ties with the land of the brave and the free, a dying empire drowning in its own effluent. Let's move on. The 11th of November. What a travesty. Now, the 11th of November, I've noticed a big change this year. Now, I want to talk about the 11th of November in a number of compartments, because the 11th of November is an important day in Australian history, as well as world history, but Australian history in particular. On the 11th of November, 1854, the Ballarat Reform League was formed, obviously in Ballarat, and that was the organisation behind the Eureka Rebellion on the 3rd of December 1854, and I'll speak about that later on and its significance. So that's day one. On the 11th of November 1880, thousands of people gathered outside the old Melbourne jail because they were protesting at the hanging of Ned Kelly, who many people saw as a liberator. And if you look at the history, you'll see that. On the 11th of November 1918 was Armistice Day, and I'll go back to that in a minute. And on the 11th of November 1975 was the day the Governor-General, the Right Honourable Mr Kerr, sacked the Whitlam-led Labor government, the most reformist government in this country's history. Next year will be the 50th anniversary of the dismissal, and obviously we'll organise things to mark that day. But what annoyed me about the 11th of November this year was the fact that it was hijacked by the Australian Defence Forces and the Australian Government. And we were told ad nauseum, it's a day to remember the deaths of Australian soldiers. Now, I always thought Anzac Day was the day which has been set aside as a day of remembrance for the sacrifice that were made by Australian and New Zealand troops. But the 11th of November has always been a day internationally, a day which remembers the war dead. It remembers the displacement, the injuries, the tragedies, especially among the civilian population of war. It's a day that highlights the importance of peace and what happens during military or armed confrontation, whether it's nation-state against nation-state, whether it's a civil war. That's what it's about. It's not just a day to remember Australian troops. They have a day. It's a day to celebrate the end of what was claimed to be the war to end all wars, which resulted in the death of over 25 million people, 62,000 Australians. So let's not rewrite history to suit the current military agenda, the current militarisation of the Australian people. And this is what it's about. It's about us getting ready to be involved in confrontation. For what? To protect our way of life? What is our way of life? Is it a life where we make decisions regarding the way we move forward? Is it a way of deciding how we create and share wealth? Or is it about maintaining the inequalities which exist in our country. Growing inequalities. Every day I have tears in my eyes. You know, when I hear Australian children are still living in poverty, when people can't put a roof over their heads, when we have a plethora of private charities trying to raise money to put food on people's tables, when we see institutions like the Australian Broadcasting Corporation being involved in campaigns to raise money to put food on people's tables. What an extraordinary situation we find ourselves in. When we have private charities putting out the begging bowl to send Australian kids to Australian public schools. Every day, the same stories. As if private charity is going to resolve the issue. I'll give you an example, simple example. I've been a doctor for 49 years and next year will be 50 years, all right? Now, I've maybe in my lifetime helped a few thousand people. That's nothing. And we're all in similar positions in what we do, okay? All in similar position. But what changes the lives of a nation or a people is campaigns which create institutions which assist people, like the National Disability Insurance Scheme. I was involved in that struggle for over 40 years to create such a scheme. And although it's got its flaws, like all schemes, it's there. It's like creating a social security system, not a bloody welfare system, but a social security system which is based on the idea that you maintain security in society by ensuring that everybody at least has the basic necessities of life. Think about it. Simple demands, not requests, demands, in a rich society, an extraordinary rich society. Think about it. Day after day, the same bloody stories. The same begging bowls. While we have people who are elected to Parliament who've got goodwill in their hearts fined very quickly. That real power doesn't lie in Parliament. It lies in the boardrooms of national and transnational corporations. It lies in the hands of the 1% that own the means of production, distribution, exchange and communications, who run across to the land of the brave and the free to celebrate the great Confabulator in his victory for unbridled, unregulated, corporatised capitalism, which is based on the blood, flesh and bones of hundreds, if not of millions, if not billions of people around the planet. What an extraordinary world we live in. If you told me when I first started on this journey when I was 16, which is what, 57 years ago when I started on this journey? If you told me today I would be talking about the same stuff that I was talking about when I was 16 in 1968, I would tell you you've got rocks in your head. But no, it's the same issue. Same issue. And have new generations profited it? No. Unless your parents or guardians have been able to profit from that neoliberal revolution. All right, so look, what can you do? Well, obviously you can get involved in campaigns to assist people. Obviously you can get involved in political campaigns to change legislation. You can become a member of an organisation I'm involved in. I'm the registered officer for public interest before corporate interests. A reformist organisation which has important policies regarding many of the issues which I raised today. I'm not talking about anarchist revolution. I'm talking about simple bloody reforms When you have revolutionaries talking about reform, you begin to understand how difficult the task is. How difficult it is. So let's see what happens in the land of the brave and the free. They've made the big decision. They've made the big decision. They'd like to climb out of the effluent they find themselves in. Let's see if the billionaires of the world, the Elon Musks, the great Confabulator, and all his, ideological supporters somehow improve their lives, because I don't believe they will. So you'll see the stock market raise and then it'll fall. And if you're an investor, well, they'll know when to get out, because they've got the money to manipulate the markets, to manipulate gold prices, to manipulate silver prices, to manipulate Bitcoin prices, and make a packet about the results of that election. Let's move on. Now, I'm also convener of the West Papuan Rent Collective. So what's the West Papuan Rent Collective? Well, over 10 years ago, my late wife and myself, that's Alan Jose, in conjunction with a number of West Papuans, decided that it was important that the West Papuans had some type of visible presence, not a virtual presence, but a visible presence. An office that should be used as a consulate, where they could continue their struggle free of the threat of eviction, free of the threat of having to spend 90% of their time raising money to pay rent. So the West Papuan Rent Collective is a group of around 90 people, currently we only have 70, who donate $1 a day to keep the office opening. And the purpose of the West Papuan office is not just to act as an information centre in the city of Melbourne and the rest of Australia, but to act as some type of coordinating force in the West Papuan independence struggle. And it's now been functioning for over 10 years. And for over 10 years, the West Papuan Rent Collective has been paying the rent to free West Papuan activists of the need to spend most of their time raising money to pay the rent. They can spend 90% of their time being involved in actions to improve their situation. Now, obviously, irrespective of what you think is happening in Gaza and southern Lebanon, the fact is that the West Papuan independence struggle has been going almost as long as the Palestinian independence struggle. It's been going since the act of, since 1967, when the Dutch authorities vacated West Papua and handed it over to the Indonesian people. And what's happened during that period, over 500,000 West Papuans from a minuscule population that ranges between 1 to 1.3 million have died because of that struggle. But they haven't been completely beaten. In the mountains, there are resistance groups, armed resistance groups. Outside the country, there is a West Papuan movement for autonomy and, more importantly, independence. And in the towns and cities, despite a horrific transmigration program which has given away land to Indonesians in West Papua to colonise West Papua and outpopulate the original inhabitants, that struggle continues. Now, obviously, not everybody listening has the capacity to give $1 a day and become a member of the West Papuan Rent Collective. But if you do find yourself in Melbourne on Sunday the 24th of November, which is not far away, what's that, 11 days away, you're all invited to come to the West Papuan office at 838 Collins Street in Docklands. Go to the number 838 and then walk around the side and come to the back and join us for lunch at 1 p.m.
enjoy a West Papuan lunch, hear speakers, get updates on the West Papuan independence struggle. And at 3 p.m, in order to overcome a deficiency of funds as far as the rent is concerned and the number of people in the rent collective, take part in the auction. Buy something. I'll be doing an auction. There'll be stuff that is very reasonably priced and stuff which is a bit more expensive. Everything is handmade. Everything is donated. Every cent that is made goes into the West Papuan rent collective, goes to the collective, which then goes on to the every cent raised goes to pay the rent on the office. Every cent. And I personally, as the convener of the West Papuan Rent Collective, I personally check the books and I can give you a guarantee, and you can look at the books if you wish, that every cent that's been collected has gone to pay the rent. You see, Christmas is coming, New Year is coming, irrespective of whether you're religious or not. It is a time, because of the number of holidays, that families gather together and people exchange gifts. So instead of going to some corporation somewhere in the city or your town and buying some moulded plastic garbage, which your kiddies will tear up in a few weeks, or be put in a cupboard and forgotten by your loved ones, why don't you come and join us at 1 p.m? Take part in the auction. Buy something that's been handmade by somebody who believes that the West Papuan struggle is an important struggle. It's a struggle that needs to be supported. I mean, it's not a great thing to ask of you. Not a great thing. It's not as if we're asking people, to take up arms and rush into West Papua or even say anything naughty. Come along, have lunch, listen to speakers, buy something at the auction. Use it as a chance to support the West Papuan movement, at the same time acquire something that has been handmade by a volunteer who believes it's important the West Papuan office continues to function as a meeting place, as a place of solidarity, as a place of struggle for the West Papuan community. You listen to The Anarchist World This Week, broadcast across Australia via the Community Radio Network. This program is streaming live on 3cr.org.au. Now, the Anarchist Media Institute is involved in a lot of activities where we highlight important days, because we think it's important that we remember our history. See, it's a little bit like Palestine, isn't it? History didn't start on the 7th of October 2023, as we're all told. It started in 1949. It started 70 years before that. It's the same in Australia. History didn't start on the 28th of January 1788. This country, this continent, has a proud 234-year tradition, and also has a proud tradition of 60,000 years of continuous occupation by over 250 independent sovereign nation states. So history points us to the future. You need to understand the past. You need to know the past to understand the present and, more importantly, change the future. Otherwise, like a rat on a treadmill, you go round and round and round and round and get nowhere. So, once again, we are helping. We are the organisation behind the Reclaim the Radical Spirit of the Eureka Rebellion Celebration Committee, which was set up 22 years ago. And this year's the 170th anniversary of the Eureka Rebellion. So why does it matter in 2024? Why does it matter? Now, if you're interested in pursuing this, I am doing a talk, presentation, lecture, whatever you like, next Tuesday the 19th of November. Not Wednesday when I normally do it, but Tuesday the 19th of November at the Footscray Hotel at 48 Hopkins Street, Footscray. 6:30 for a 7 p.m. start. 6:30 for a 7 p.m. start. The Footscray Hotel doesn't provide food, but you're welcome to bring food to share at the communal table. And I'll be talking about the significance of the Eureka Rebellion, what it means 170 years later, and why, on Tuesday the 3rd of December, the Reclaim the Radical Spirit of the Eureka Rebellion group, in association with Ballarat and Regional Trade Hall, will be hosting, once again, a celebration which stretches from 4 a.m, that's right, 4 a.m, the time the revolt was, the time the Eureka encampment was attacked by British soldiers and Victorian police, to 10 p.m. It includes a dinner, includes many activities. You can look it up on the Facebook page, wherever. But importantly, what's important about it? There is so much misinformation, disinformation about the Eureka Rebellion. And to me, it's encapsulated in the oath which was taken by miners after a mass meeting at Bakery Hill on the 29th of November 1854, as they decided to set up an encampment a few kilometres away at the corner of Eureka and Stall Street in Ballarat. And that oath is so symbolic. It's not about God, King and country. It's not about our great corporate leaders. It's not about government. It's about us. And the oath is very simple. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties. Simple. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties. We. This is 1854. We. Everybody. And if you look at the people involved in the Eureka Rebellion, they came from all corners of the planet, including the land of the brave and the free, all colours, all religions. I think we, the people. We swear by the Southern Cross. Why the Southern Cross? Is it a religious analogy? Christian religious analogy? No. There are two constellations you can see in the Southern Hemisphere. Remember, this isn't a time of mobile phones, internet, podcasts. You know, people just lay on their backs after a hard day's work in their tents. They looked up in the sky and they saw the Southern Cross and the Morning Star. Interestingly, the Morning Star is the symbol of the West Papuan government in exile. It's their symbol. It's the symbol of the West Papuan people, the Morning Star. So you've got this association between the West Papuan independence movement and the Eureka Rebellion 170 years previously. So when they lay on their backs and looked up in the sky, they saw the Southern Cross, which reminded them they were another part of the world. They didn't come here to replicate the inequalities that existed in Europe. They came here to create a new world. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other. Solidarity, the essence of any struggle. No solidarity, no organisation, no success. I can talk till the cows come home. I can talk under wet concrete. But the amount of success I have is minimal, nil, unless other people come together and take up that struggle. That's what it's about. That's what the Anarchist World this week is about. It's about encouraging people to take up struggle. We swear with the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties. It's interesting, isn't it? For many years, when you looked at historic accounts during the 19th century and part of the 20th century, the word "and fight" was removed from the oath as far as historical documents was concerned. And fight to defend our rights and liberties. These people believed they were born with inalienable rights and liberties that no government, no employer, no corporation, no religious leader could take from them. And that's what we celebrate. And the essence of the Eureka Rebellion is, and I'll speak about this at the presentation on the 19th of November at the Footscray Hotel at 48 Hopkins Street, 6:30pm for a 7pm start, is direct democracy, direct action, solidarity, and internationalism. Internationalism. Think about it. If you can make it on Tuesday, well and good. If you can't, the dawn ceremony will be broadcast live on Community Radio 3CR from 4am to 6am. That's 3cr.org.au. 855 on the AM dial. Okay, let's move on. Mr. Dutton, I see that he's getting himself organised as potential Prime Minister. He knows the buttons to push, isn't it? The migrants. It's always good. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a refugee. We don't have immigration issues like they have in the United States of America. And let's not forget it was the Howard government that doubled immigration in this country, and this country has always relied on immigration to provide labour to expand, because after World War II and the Japanese bombing of Darwin and Broome and other parts of Thursday Island, the Torres Strait, other parts of North Queensland, the old cry went up, populate or perish. But we'll see Mr. Dutton try, with all his help from the Reinhardts and the Pratts of the world who've learnt the lessons of the great Confabulator, how to, ensure there is no reality in any campaign. And before you know it, hey presto, the great Confabulator will be holding hands with our own Peter Dutton. What a wonderful sight to see. So, there is an election coming up. Keep it in mind. You never know what's going to happen in the big wide world. And just in case you think we've forgotten about this country's First Nations people, let's not forget it was the Anarchist Media Institute, which was the organisation behind the Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheenner Commemoration Committee. And through their efforts, they were able to establish, or force the Melbourne City Council to establish, a significant monument to the public execution on the 20th of January 1842 of Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheenner, two Tasmanian Aborigines who came to this country with three women, Truganini, Planabina and Putirana, and conducted a guerrilla struggle which drove thousands of settlers back to Melbourne. And for openly rebelling about colonisation, they were hung by the British state here in Melbourne. And on the 20th of January, at midday on the 20th of January, which is a Monday this year, we once again will be holding the Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheenner Commemoration at the Commemoration Monument at the corner of Victoria Street, down there across the road from the old Melbourne Jail. So, thank you for listening to the Anarchist World this week, broadcast across Australia via the Community Radio Network. This program has been streaming live on 3cr.org.au. The program is podcast. If you don't like what you hear, don't tune in next week. There's no point. Or let your friends know, and they may have a better understanding of the world. If you like it, tell people about the podcasts. Thousands of podcasts there for you to listen to. But more importantly, stop being one of these internet warriors, because you'll get RSI of your forefinger as you click, click, click. And stop being an armchair anarchist or activist. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you can get out of your armchair, get out of your armchair and get involved. Whether you get involved in activities that we organise or activities other people organise is irrelevant. What's relevant is to be involved. And if you're interested in many of these ideas and you're a reformist mind, you can always join Public Interest Before Corporate Interest online, Pibci, PIBCI.net, or you can ring 0439 395 489 and leave pleasant messages. The sacred cows have come back in. They've told me my time is up. The producer is putting up her fingers at me again. It's just disgusting what I've got to put up with so I can speak to you. But thank you once again for listening to The Anarchist World this week on your local community radio station, courtesy of the Community Radio Network.
Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction.
An analysis you'll never hear anywhere else. Anarchist World this week. Australia's Sacred Cow Slaughterhouse. 10 a.m. every Wednesday. Listen to The Anarchist World this week for an up-to-date analysis of local, national and international events.
Poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord, yeah.
We know you love listening to 3CR, but we also know that many of you haven't downloaded the Community Radio Plus app yet.
The app lets you tune in anywhere and share the station with your friends.
So, show the love and share the love and search Community Radio Plus wherever you get your apps.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.